Paul Carter Harrison, who I met when I first came to New York a long time ago, is a playwright, director, dramaturg, and theater theorist whose work has been produced and published in both Europe and the United States. He has had a long artistic association as writer, director with the Negro Ensemble Company, which produced his signature Obie Award play, The Great Mac Daddy. A recipient of a Rockefeller Foundation Fellowship for American Playwriting, a National Endowment of the Arts Playwrights Fellowship, and 2 Meet the Composer Reader's Digest commissions. Harrison is also the author of The Drama of Nomo, a book of his theoretical essays that have had a seminal influence in the exploration of ritual stylization for many contemporary practitioners of black theater. Having retired from Columbia College Chicago in 2002, Harrison currently resides mostly in Panama, but he's also in New York City bugging us, and serves as visiting artist scholar at Emory University, where he guides a research project on critical vocabulary on African diasporic expressivity. That sounds pretty heavy.
Good evening, everyone. I'll try to follow that. That was wonderful. Thank you. Usually when I come in the company of my peers in the theater, they say, here comes Paul again with that same old stuff, which means that I'm going to somehow castigate them for the kinds of stuff that they're doing. I don't like what's going on in the black theater. And they say, well, it's black people doing black work. Isn't that good enough? No. It is not good enough for black people to do stage work if it's nothing to do with black aesthetics, as far as I'm concerned. So I keep asking that question. I've been asking that question for about 40 years. And coming around now to the point, Quincy was stumbling around with that, what he thought was a very heavy notion of trying to create, or not create, but rather study what I would call the critical vocabulary for African diasporic expressivity. In other words, how do we judge, how do we evaluate black work? What is the language that we use to do that? Right now, we only have one single language, that's the Western canon. And we look at a black work through the same lens, aesthetically, that we look at something of Shakespeare or something of certainly O'Neill. And we're trying to get around that. We've been trying to get around that for a long time. So to start with, I'm going to read some of this from the article, from the essay. I'm going to start with a piece by a quote from a Ghanaian playwright, prolific playwright, J.C. de Graaf, who says, and I think this is an important point of departure, if drama is at heart a goddess, she manifests herself in many ways, many shapes, many voices. Given the infinite variety of preoccupations which men bring to her shrine, that manifestation, which may constitute nothing but sheer boredom for one pilgrim, may be the essence of revelation for another, touching off whatever it is in him that enables him to achieve communion with the goddess of the shrine. It seems ultimately what matters is not how the goddess manifests herself, but what degree of readiness to self-surrender each pilgrim brings to the shrine with him, and how much spiritual power the priests of the shrine bring to bear of the rituals of the goddess. And so I often ask myself, what are we doing up there? What are these plays, so-called black plays, doing? Why do you call them black plays? Are they not American plays, primarily? If they're doing work that's in the same aesthetic base, formulated in the same way, the same kind of plot orientations, well, why are they doing this kind of thing? Well, they have a shrine that they're playing to. It's usually called the dollar, the eagle shrine. It's a very interesting story so I was told recently by an actor how he was working in a particular play where he did not like to work in that particular play, but he had one line in the play that he thought would justify his presence on the stage. And he studied that one line and went and did all the research on how to support that one line, the historical relationship of that one line to his black presence. And he played around with how to express it, in fact. He worked on this throughout his rehearsal period. In the last moment, the director cut the line. So I asked him, well, what did you do? He said, well, you know, they're paying me $850 a day to do this, a week rather, $850 a week. I had to do it. See, so this is what's been going on. I want to try to bring to your attention here this, what is it that we call black theater? When many of the works that are in the black theater are so different. Most of them are domestic dramas. Most of them are slices of life. And they are usually chronicles of triumph over unrequited love or poverty, or biographical homage to celebrate historical leaders and cultural icons. That's not all so bad. While others simply want to clap their hands and pat their feet while swaying with the stirring emotions generated in the urban circuit gospel musical. Then there is the compulsive, near irresistible appeal of black celebrities exploited in all black cast Broadway productions to resurrect dead masters of the Great White Way. Cat on a Hot Tin Roof, A Streetcar Named Desire, The Trip to Bountiful. And yet, a new installation of Porgy and Bess. Most confounding is the Atlanta-based True Color, I call it Colored, company, appearance in last year's National Black Arts Festival with a production of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner? Black theater, huh? And then there are often too frequent occasions when the black community is cajoled by the market strategies of black theatrical institutions, such as the Center Stage in Baltimore, which, under the guise of encouraging greater audience diversity, offer deceptive programming. Examples include the spin-off of Raisin in the Sun, presented as a Raisin Cycle, which includes a repertory of Claiborne Park, a 2011 Pulitzer Prize work with its caustic appraisal of black dysfunction, and Beneath This Place, a work written opportunistically for the occasion by the artistic director that imagines the paths taken by two principal characters from the original Hansberry play, the resolute Beneatha and her judicious African boyfriend, Asagai. There had been, initially, when there had been, in the early 60s, when black authors or poets and authors were writing, they had an idea why they were doing this. Much of what's going on now, there's no real understanding of why to do it other than somehow trying to secure some bank, some coin as the word goes. Not surprising that the black theater as a practice was the birth child of the 1960s black arts movement. In his essay, Survival Motion, a study of the black writer and the black revolution in America, the poet Steve Henderson observed the following: To write black poetry is an act of survival, of regeneration, of love. Black writers do not write for white people and refuse to be judged by them. They write for black people and they write about their blackness. And out of their blackness, rejecting anyone and anything that stands in the way of self-knowledge and self-celebration, the poets and the playwrights are especially articulate and especially relevant and speaks directly to the people. In the infancy of black theater practice, clearly there was a sense of the social purpose. The emergence of this especially inspired, ethnically inspired stage experience required an aesthetic formulation to identify its uniqueness as a culturally specific product. Hoyt Fuller, the editor of Negro Digest, and guiding spirit behind the Chicago-based Organization of Black American Culture, noted that writers were deliberately striving to invest their work with the distinctive styles and rhythms and colors of the ghetto, with those particular or peculiar qualities which, for example, characterize the music of a John Coltrane or a Charlie Parker, a Ray Charles. Fuller's description appears to focus on social styles of the ghetto, though most black people lived in organized, however imperfect, communities. Neither does he take into account, despite a shout out to Ray Charles, the impact of the rich sediment of cultural expression located in rural black life, a repository of folklore, mythic heroes, cornfield haulers, coded field haulers, and idiomatic elaboration of storytelling that was not lost on the poet Larry Neal, who, in his appeal to black artists to formulate a black aesthetic, issued an ideological manifesto, which I always come to this point whenever I'm talking. I always say, go back to Larry Neal. His ideological manifesto that would jettison the Western canon in favor of African American iconology, symbology, mythology, and critique. The scholar critic Houston Baker astutely responded that such an enunciation of difference would require distinctive codes that distinguish African-inspired expression from European expressive strategies. It is, and this is the main point of this essay, it is difficult to mythologize the black experience beyond the popular narrative embraced by the dominant culture. Next to the parental dysfunction in Precious and the implausible near-pornographic carnal liaison between a white racist and an indigent black woman in Monsters Ball, servitude is a very marketable theme for the entertainment industry, as made evident by the popular receptivity of black stars featured in films like Gone with the Wind, Lincoln, Django Unchained, Driving Miss Daisy, The Help, and now The Butler. And I suppose I haven't seen the most recent incarnation of slavery, but 12 years of 12 years of slavery. I haven't seen it yet, but same kind of idea. These characterizations of Negro subservience and obedience are not simply frivolous imaginings to instill in the minds, even hearts, of African Americans a sense of nobility or even pride, but rather they are calculated marketing subterfuges to maintain control over the black images that sell in the dominant culture. Having been conditioned by popular media to suspend critical judgment in the interest of justifying an appreciation for celebrity, no matter how mediocre the entertainment product, black Americans were only too happy to spend an evening up close with two black superstars in the Broadway production of Katori Hall's Mountaintop. Their nobler aspirations to be supportive betrayed by a mendacious stage event that was a far cry from the aesthetic persuasion of Larry Neal. One must query at this point, having endured what amounted to a character assassination, I don't know how many of you have seen this play, to what shrine might Miss Hall have been bowing to in her critique of the iconic Martin Luther King Jr., demythologizing him at the altar of carnal desire aroused by an attractive symbolic death angel, reducing the monumentality of his mortal sacrifice to civil rights to just another doggish brother sniffing around for conjugal gratification. An injunction against the interrogation of revered personalities and events is not what is at issue here, but to frame the interrogation in such a titillating, even deceitful revision of that dreadful hour of mortal transition, which was spiritually disruptive for most black Americans, was unconscionable and could only be motivated by profit in the marketplace by any means necessary. As a black, that is pretty much what's been happening in the theater. At least that's how I've been experiencing it. It's making me not want to go very often, and I'm supposed to be a person of the theater. But I don't want to, I guess you can read this when you get around to it, but I'm going to try to move forward to the end. I'm going to go to, again, de Graaf. He says something that I think is very interesting. Again, he advises that, de Graaf advises that drama derives from, while drama derives from everyday life, it is not the same thing as everyday life. Rather, it is a condensation from everyday life, whose many aspects, visible and invisible, tangible and intangible, it attempts to manifest, embody, or affirm. As a performative medium, theater has the capacity of drawing from the mundane life a heightened sense of collective experience without the verisimilitude or replication of experience. As opposed to linear narratives of a familiar experience constructed in African American drama, exponents of black theater practice might profit more from ritualized performance strategies similar to the black church in order to provide the audience a sense of transformative illumination of familiar experiences. The objective here being, similar to the black church practice, that the audience does not leave the performance space the same way it came in. And finally, it's not a doomsday forecast here, because there are people, as we speak, there's a generation of younger people who are no longer working in that particular way, that kind of constructed linear storytelling, and who are now moving toward the kind of amalgam of music and poetry, etc., physical actions on the stage, and are moving toward another way of bringing an enlightened experience called the theater, other than what we have been seeing in recent times. But I would say that much of what we see today is not in the best interest of either our entertainment or otherwise our edification, certainly not. Okay, I'll pass right there. Thank you.